Hi, my name is Tom Boudreau with R&R Insurance from Waukesha, Wisconsin, and I also have an office in West Bend as well. The reason I wanted to put together this clip today is because I recently had a committee meeting where, well, I should call it a meeting where there was no safety committee. And my client asked me to come in along with John Bringos, who was our internal loss control or risk management consultant. He's a salaried employee, we don't charge for him. But John and I went out and met with this client because they said, Tom, we had a safety committee and it's just kind of gone stale. So John and I said, well, this isn't a problem. We deal with these sorts of things all the time. So John and I went out there and we met with basically a manager from each of the departments, the owner and the CFO of the company. And we sat down and said, this is really all we have to do here. We're not going to try to overkill it either. We're only going to pick probably 2 to 3 items to complete a year. Otherwise it just gets a little bit too much. So what I'm going to talk about today are really the 7 essential functions of a safety meeting. And the first one is simply enforce the company's policies. One of the things we noticed was in the employee handbook there was no safety section. The safety section was non-existent. We did find a phone policy, and the phone policy was darn near, almost went far back as bag phones. Things have changed a little bit since then. Now we have to have a phone policy, we have to have a texting policy, we have to have a phone policy for if your vehicle is over 10,000 G, gross vehicle weight. So there's all these policies that were simply not even there. So if you don't have an employee handbook with at least a safety portion in it, that's a really good place to start. Number 2 is simply enforce the policies that you have in place and make sure your employees know about them. If you do drug testing, make sure the employees know about the drug testing process. If you have light duty work to offer after a work comp injury claim, make sure they know it's their responsibility to go to the doctor and come back to you with a light duty return to work slip. Those are some things that the safety committee needs to focus on as well, and make sure that the employee knows those things as well. That's really how you start creating that safer work culture. Develop plans of actions is number 3, and this is a real big one here, is look at the losses that have taken place and develop a plan of action to reduce the frequency of those losses. I work with a lot of metalworking operations and manufacturing operations, and I see particle in eye over and over and over again. Or I see carpal tunnel in some operations where we can probably either engineer out the repetitive motion, or there's a variety of different things we can do. We can have an ergonomic analysis as well to see maybe if there can be different tools that they can use, or the piece of equipment could be manipulated in a different way. So we do a top 3 analysis of your main loss drivers. That's going to help keep your employees safe, and that's going to make your underwriter at the insurance carrier happy, because you're committed to focusing on those 3 areas which are costing the insurance company the most money in the first place. So that's the top 3 analysis is very important. Number 4, we talked about analyzing the losses and where they're coming from, but what do we do when there is a loss? We got to get down to the root cause analysis, or the root cause of the loss. And we need to do an accident investigation, really. And I have samples and samples of accident investigation reports, but they're real simple ones. They're basically who, what, where, when, and why, and how do we prevent it from ever happening again. And we use those with an underwriter again at the end of the policy term to say, look, we know this big giant piece of metal fell on his foot and he was wearing a steel-toed shoe, and it doesn't matter, but this is how it's never going to happen again. And I've had a lot of situations like that where they say, Tom, we're not comfortable with this risk because we're really afraid this is going to happen again. And I can say, look, John Bringos and I met with the insured. This is how it's never going to happen again. And then they offer renewal terms. But accident investigation is a whole entire other piece of this that John and I do. It's a whole entire other meeting. It's multiple meetings. John and I actually audit accident investigation reports, because the number thing we don't like to see is employee was careless. Employees do get careless at times, but that's generally not the true root cause of the problem. So I'll get off my soapbox on that. But sponsor safety training for employees. Bring in third parties. Bring in a John Bringos. Bring in somebody from DOT compliance like an Optima. Bring in videos and get a wide variety of toolbox talks. We have all those. We work with 30 different carriers, so if I ask 30 carriers for them to send me something on safe lifting, you wouldn't even believe the types of information I get. It's phenomenal. So I have all these resources at my fingertips. You just got to roll them out to your employees. Lastly, it's pretty simple. Make sure you have a stock safety kit, a first aid kit, and somebody that's responsible for emergency needs. Most oftentimes you could be calling 911 if it's severe, but if it's first aid, make sure there's a responsible person for that. So those are kind of the 7 pillars of a safety committee. In short, that's kind of what we do, is help you get your safety committee off the ground or get it back in action if it was a little stale and out of date. We would certainly love an opportunity to help you with those. It's what we do every day.